Hi, we are going to talk about Chiron today, the archetype of Chiron, which I personally find very fascinating and appealing. If you know the story of Chiron, you know that Chiron's life wasn't fair. Unfairness is embedded in the story and the myth of Chiron. If you go by the story, you would have read that Chiron had sustained a permanent injury because he was caught in the crosshairs of somebody else's battle. He just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time and was poisoned by an arrow. Chiron spent the rest of his life in chironic pain. So I hope you know where chronic comes from now. Because when we refer to chronic pain, we refer to a pain that does not go away no matter what you try. Trying to heal a wound that just didn't seem to want to fully heal, he became a master of astrology, acupuncture, homeopathy, sound therapy, energy healing, and just about every alternate medicine we have on this planet. This is why Chiron is the father of alternative medicine. And that is why he spent so much time learning these alternate forms of medication. Eventually, he became a teacher and was consulted for his healing gifts. Why are we referring to this? Because wanting out of life and wanting to die is also inherent in this myth. Chiron was an immortal with a wound, which meant that he would live forever, but he would live in pain. Eventually, he made a bargain with another god to trade his immortality for mortality so that he could die. Those who have experienced chronic pain and suffering maybe understand this kind of dark and morbid bargaining. The Chiron journey is like this: you try everything you can to ease that ache, that pain, and while you may or may not be successful in easing your pain, you become a master of yourself. You learn healing techniques, you learn self awareness, you develop a certain level of conscience. If Chiron is strongly placed in your soul and embedded well in your psyche, you are a wounded healer. You become a wounded healer. You're doomed and destined to become a wounded healer. So, you know why I'm referring about this? Because I think everyone has a Chiron, an area of life that aches, that feels incredibly unfair, and tempts us into adopting a victim consciousness. And it is not just defined or circumscribed to physical health, although a need for integration and healing is at the root of it. Uh, I brought it up simply probably to underline that nobody has it perfect, and we all have that as I said, that area of life from which something new wants to emerge, yet it seems like the most difficult thing to happen. And eventually, while that new thing might not emerge, something will, like a revelation, a perspective, a healing, an insight, a self awareness, and most of all, gratitude. And so I wanted to bring to you a poem because, in the midst of these dark stories and dark bargainings, there is this poem which was composed out of this very thought that while there are these 100 things that do not go according to your plan, there are a few things that do. And let's celebrate those few things for whatever they are worth. So there's this little poem I had composed which is called Strokes of Joy, which I will be reading out to you. And it goes something like this. The first was that I was no longer in pain. I could sleep. The second was that I was sometimes able to love. All my life, I had been more or less shut. The third was that I lived in a city that had beautiful parks. I was happy looking at fireflies and even their empty exoskeletons, their shells shaking a little in the wind. The fourth was that sometimes I felt rinsed clean and at peace. The fifth was that sometimes, though not often, I knew when I was locked into my story. The sixth was that I didn't die young, locked into that story. I knew I wasn't the only one who had an absent something. The seventh was that I was interested in pebbles, flowers, and plants, which were everywhere. The eighth was my group of friends, in whom I found myself too. The ninth was writing erratically. The tenth was that I did not want to be a box fit. The 11th was that I could see a strip of light on my curtain always and draw it. And even though it might not turn out to be a good drawing, I had noticed the light. The 12th was that I could see a mentor who walked me to the door and said, I hope things are better next week. The 13th was that I lived so close to my mother. The 14th was that there were books in my legacy. The 15th was my dreams. They told me to start teaching. They told me to keep going. They told me to keep seeking light in the shadows. They told me who loved me. They were never wrong. Thank you. So, this was my little poem. I think bringing in bits and pieces of realizations that dawn on us eventually about the little things for which we are so grateful in life. And I'm sorry because my phone kept tumbling as I kept reciting. Uh, I think probably echoing some of the conflicted emotions we were referring to. Thank you.